item on the agenda is a brief presentation of the report by Iratxe GARCÍA PÉREZ, deployment of cohesion policy instruments by regions to address demographic change. Let me give the floor now to the rapporteur, and I would just like to take the opportunity to welcome Commissioner CREţU.
Thank you very much, President, Madam Commissioner. We have before us a report on demographic challenges, which, from my perspective, is absolutely crucial to the future of the European Union. We are the continent with the oldest population anywhere in the world, and I think that along with figures, show the demographic situation, because 80% of our population live in 20% of its surface area, and that means that we have rural areas which are vast but are seeing very high levels of depopulation, which is extremely worrying. Commissioner CREţU, I'm very glad you're here, because I think that that is a reflection of the European Commission's commitment to this very crucial issue, and I would like also to pay tribute to all the work that has been done by the various shadow rapporteurs from the different political groups, as well as the staff of our committee, in seeking to improve this report that we are debating this evening. I wanted to mention that in my initial remarks. Now, in 2018, we are set to enter into crucial negotiations, and we are going to have to look ahead to a new budgetary framework for the European Union, as well as new rules for the structural funds. And when we come to grapple with both of those issues, it is absolutely vital that we as a parliament determine how we deal with the issue of population within the European Union. And I was very pleased with both the debate and the vote in the Regional Development Committee on this report, because I think that both go to show that we have managed to carve out a position on very important issues, rural depopulation for one thing, and for another, putting in place a legal framework. It is crucial that we have a legal framework to define precisely which regions are affected by depopulation and therefore should enjoy priority status when it comes to resolving the issues facing us right now. We also believe that there should be budgetary appropriations within all of these structural funds to rise to the challenges being faced with those areas subject to depopulation. We have a number of other issues reflected in this report, and that is that GDP should not be the sole criterion when it comes to deciding on the sharing out of funding. This is important. Now, of course, GDP is important, but cannot be the only determining criterion. One also needs to look at the process of depopulation, look at aging in rural areas and other salient issues, because we have some regions which are very, very rich, but they do not have sufficient population so as to be able to put into operation European structural funds. And that is why we need coordination between structural funds and between the CAP and investment funds and so on and so forth. We have issues in rural areas. We need also to have public services in rural areas. They are absolutely essential. Austerity policies have done a huge amount of damage to our societies, but to rural areas in particular, because when a school closes down in a town, that is serious. But when they close down in rural areas, it's disastrous, and that is why we have to make rural areas more attractive, and we have to get young women settling there and making their futures there. Now, we don't have much time. Rural areas are in huge difficulties, and if we are unable to put in place real determined policies at European Union level, we will not be able to counter this phenomenon. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo, droga Iratxe.
Thank you very much. Iratxe, thank you. Now, we will proceed as follows. First of all, we'll have the Catch the Eye, and then we'll have the responses from Commissioner CREİșu. But we have 12 speakers and 5 minutes. So, in theory, I could only take half of the speakers. But maybe we should just start, and then we'll see. So, the first speaker is Mr. Edge.
Maximum 1 minute local time.
The EU's cohesion policy offers a chance for poorer regions and member states to catch up, which is in the interest of the whole of the EU and all of its inhabitants. However, the existing NUTS2 statistical planning has its limitations, and we often see increasing territorial inequalities within a region or a member state. This economic divergence, of course, entails demographic consequences. A possible solution might be envisaged by taking into account this aspect when allocating cohesion funds. National authorities cannot exercise control, however, and lack of planning or bad planning further exacerbates territorial inequalities. We might consider to strengthen the NUTS 3 level, as serious problems within a bigger region might be covered up by favorable statistics resulting from the performance of only a few development areas. Thank you very much.
Dziękuję uprzejmie. Pani Sylvie Ward, bardzo proszę.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Ward.
We're at a turning point in history with our European societies facing many challenges and transitions. Demographic upheaval must be dealt with in the broader context of sustainability. Responding to democratic challenges requires collective debate about how we can achieve social justice and guarantee a fair and inclusive model for everyone. A model which puts at the forefront not only economic development, but more importantly, the collective and individual well-being of citizens, touching upon all the key policy areas such as employment, poverty reduction, urban and rural development, connectivity and support for SMEs. Cohesion policy is indeed the right tool to address those challenges. I particularly welcome the focus on women and their role in societies, as well as the call to use the fund for refugees' inclusion. And I would add that in a fast-changing world characterised by increasing digitisation, robotisation and automation, a future-proof sustainable agenda should be included in a broader reflection on occupational literacy. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo, pan Notis Marias. No more.
Mr. Marias.
Political cohesion needs to look at demographic problems, particularly in Greece. In 2013, I tabled a question on how we could deal with issues raised by the memorandum under which we're living, which has made things a lot worse. And I asked another question last year. There's a study now that's been carried out by the Berlin Institute, which has said that the financial prospects for Greece are still not good. Greece has lost 3% of its population over the last few years. Fewer children are being born because of the crisis as well. It's clear, therefore, that because of harsh measures and the memorandum, you now need to start taking positive measures to support Greece from the European Union so that these problems can be offset. Please explain what proposal you have, Commissioner. Thank you, President.
Dziękuję bardzo, pan Hadjigeorgiou, bardzo proszę.
Mr. Hadjigeorgiou.
President, I think that the rapporteur, who I'd like to congratulate very much on the question, has made it clear that the population in Europe is ageing, but she's also looked at this in terms of population differentiation. People living in the cities and those living in the country. That's to say, this is very important. We need to try to persuade people to stay in their villages, in the countryside. That's the only way that people will feel that they are living freely. And if we leave that source, lose the countryside, that's to say, we're just going to have harder problems to solve. The people who live in the cities are indirectly causing problems. We need, therefore, to try to get people to stay in the countryside if we possibly can. Thank you, President.
Bardzo dziękuję, pani Rosa D'Amato. Bardzo proszę.
Thank you, Rosa D'Amato.
Grazie Presidente. La relazione della collega Perez è...
Thank you very much indeed. This report is a good document for reflecting on demographic changes and imbalances within the European Union. We have millions of farm holdings and many hectares of farmland which make a contribution to the economy as well as to preserving our ecosystems. But I have a specific proposal, and that is to look at mountainous holdings, small and medium in size, and traditional holdings which use methods which are sustainable and produce quality products, and that way can help to resist this trend towards rural depopulation. We need to look at what drives people towards depopulation and a constant loss of population and low birth rates. We also need to look at the role of the European Social Fund in fighting social exclusion and poverty, and that is why we should have no budget cuts. Rather, we should have a fund for a minimum income, as already decided by the European Parliament by a large majority in a report which was sponsored by the Five Star Movement.
Dziękuję bardzo, pan Georgios Epitideeios.
Thank you, Mr. Epitideeios.
Thank you, President. The problem of ageing, the population problem in general, is something that's crucially important, and political cohesion policy need to start moving things in the right direction. We need, first of all, to assess the population and try to make sure that where we have productive sources we still get people to stay by using community funding so that we can make certain this production continues. That's to say, we need incentives so that young people stay in the countryside or move to the countryside, start farms, have a family. We need protection and incentives so that companies are set up in the countryside and that young people don't abandon the rural areas of Europe. Thank you, President.
Dziękuję bardzo, pani Anna Zaborska. Bardzo proszę.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zaborska.
Thank you, President. Commissioner, in the Farm Committee I have submitted 7 amendments. The final wording of the report reflected 2 ideas which are keys to addressing the problem of an aging Europe. The first idea is about intergenerational solidarity. Not even an enormous increase in fertility rates will not change the fact that over the next 20 years the number of senior citizens will be increasing and economically active people declining. The other idea is about establishing families and supporting families. Even the rapporteur declined the notion of family streaming that we suggested. She admitted that supporting families is a way of improving the demographic situation in Europe. I wish the Commission took on board these 2 ideas in their future proposals regarding regional cohesion. Thank you.
Pani Zaborskiej za dokładnie o 1 minutę. Pan Nicola CAPUTO, bardzo.
Thank you very much. You stuck to that time very quickly, Mr. Caputo.
Presidente, come in tutte le...
Thank you very much indeed, President. As in all post-industrial societies, the European Union is characterized by an increase in life expectancy and a drop in the birth rate. and this has led to a decline in many rural and remote areas. And this means that there are a number of challenges for areas of southern Italy, for example. The cohesion policy we have has the tools it needs to tackle demographic change, but we need to look at the priority dimensions of it and look at better coordination between different European Union instruments. We need a change in approach and make sure that the EU mainstreams demographics across all of its policy areas to look at employment, agriculture, environment, research, as well as social policy and transport. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. Pan Stanislav Polčák.
Thank you, Mr. Polčák.
Děkuji, pane předsedo, za udělení slova. Skutečně demografická změna má hluboké důsledky. Stárnutí populace, snížení počtu dětí a mládeže.
We have an important impact. We've seen a drop in the number of children. We've seen problems in terms of spatial planning as well and employment. So look at the reasons for an aging population and the depopulation of certain areas. First of all, a lack of investment, a very poor infrastructure, poor connectivity, and very poor connections with neighbouring regions. And I think the essential criterion for sharing structural funds, of course, should be GDP, but at the same time we can discuss the importance of other additional criteria. Clearly this is a necessary discussion if we are to find a solution to this problem of population ageing. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. Pan Andrey Novakov.
Thank you, Mr. Novakov.
Благодаря, господин председател.
Thank you, Chair. For me, the demographic crisis is not a lesser evil than all natural cataclysms and economic crises we are familiar with. If for natural cataclysms and economic crisis the EU has instruments, then for the demographic it does not have one instrument. Therefore, I will like to present an idea for European initiative for the depopulated regions. A package of measures should be included to allow easy access to EU funding, preferential terms to apply for EU-funded projects, technical assistance. And in this way, administrative capacity will be created on the spot. We need to do the utmost with the cohesion policy we have to allow for the people to go back to their homes and have a proper livelihood. We can return the human capital back into the depopulated areas.
Dziękuję uprzejmie. Pan Sergio Gutierrez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gutierrez.
Gracias, comisaria, y gracias.
Thanks, Commissioner, and thanks to the rapporteur for this very good report, which shows how the problem of depopulation in Europe needs to be sorted out through some major institutional action, because ultimately we're all aware of the consequences of depopulation, their environmental, social consequences, but what we need to do is tackle the cause, and the cause is the lack of equality of opportunity because of a lack of investment, a lack of public services, and also a lack, at the end of the day, of companies who can create jobs. So we need positive discrimination. We need effort from the community budget for these regions, for these areas where the biggest problems of depopulation are. It can't just be a percentage of GDP, which is the key element as far as community funding is concerned. We need to start by looking for internal cohesion between the urban and the rural. We need to create more investment so that we have real equality of opportunity in our countries. Thanks, Mr. President.
Dziękuję bardzo i wystąpienie zamykające tę część Catch the Eye. Pan...
Thank you very much. Mr. KORWIN-MIKKE.
Ja słucham tej dyskusji i ze zdumieniem zauważam, że ludzie nie poruszają najważniejszej przyczyny, dla której demograficzna...
I'm surprised to see that the most important cause of the democratic problems is not being seen. women are not staying home. They're going out and working, and they're having fewer children. And everyone is saying that women should be working outside the home. But if we can't solve that problem, then there's no point in discussing this.
Panu posłowi. Ponieważ to jest catch the eye,
Thank you, Mr. Korwin-Mikke. That concludes the Catch the Eye, and I would like to conclude the debate, and perhaps I could ask Mrs. CREșU to conclude the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Dziękuję bardzo. Thank you, Chair. Honourable members, ladies and gentlemen, of course I have liked to start by thanking for this report to Mrs. García Pérez, but allow me as a woman, as a commissioner, to say that it's inadmissible to have such a speech and to hear such a speech against women in the most democratic house of the European Union. So I know your point of view about women. We are not weak. We are not stupid. We are human. We are in the equal foot with you, with all of you. So, above all, I would like to warmly thank this report prepared by Mrs. García Pérez. I am very grateful to you and for your energy to raise awareness on this important issue of the population of the European Union. And I also want to congratulate you for replying to this kind of speeches. I was in Poland and I knew the reaction in Poland. The Polish people thanked me that I took the floor and I said that this is unacceptable for the 21st century. To say that women are stupid, weak, and we are not per kilogram here, Mr. So, your report is reminding us the wide variations in demographic trends in Europe between and within member states. Already today, many areas in Europe faces serious challenges with important social and economic consequences. You know very well that I visited some parts of the depopulated areas in Spain, as well as visited northern Europe. I really think it's a very important topic and we have to be very serious. We have a lot of studies which shows that population change is determined by the age structure of the population, mortality, fertility, and the balance between in and out migration. It's not about women are not staying home and making children. It's about economy. It's about families that for the better lives they are going out because they, as you said here, they have no opportunities, they not have enough investments, enough means for a better life. So these kind of things evolve very slowly. As a result, demographic trends evolve also slowly, including at the regional level. So it is our duty with public policies to take these changes into account. And as you already said, cohesion policy already contains many provisions to address the specific needs of geographical areas suffering from severe and permanent natural and demographic handicaps. Measures identified by member states show varieties of responses to demographic challenges. However, whatever action you take, they must be taken having inclusion and equality as a precondition. And this in turn means providing essential infrastructures such as childcare, healthcare and long-term care facilities. Another important question to address is the integration of migrants across Europe. And I am very grateful that you have included this because it's a challenge that it was not foreseen but we have to face these days. As the report indicates, we must support member states by reinforcing measures to tackle this issue. Ladies and gentlemen, and you have already underlined here, it is our responsibility to ensure that all migrants are integrated, and this means that they can fully participate in all aspects of our societies and communities, be it social or economic. At the end of the day, this is clearly a win-win situation. For one thing, the alternative is unthinkable. Inclusion in any forms breeds resentment, confrontation, extremism and sometimes violence. Integration, on the other hand, is a promise of stability and of peace, not to mention the economic contributions that migrants, usually young people, can bring to an ageing population. I believe the European Union funds, including cohesion policy, can and should provide opportunities for member states to support such integration measures. In her report, Mrs. García Pérez also touches, and I saw that many members touches on the GDP and the possibility of having new indicators to allocate cohesion policy funding. And I agree with all of you. GDP alone does not accurately enough reflect the needs of a region, as it leaves out crucial parameters such as quality of life, social inclusion, level of employment or sustainable development. This is why, to complement GDP, the Commission is investigating other indicators, including demographic change. Regarding a new ex-ante conditionality on national strategies for demographic development, I will be very honest with you, and you know very well that at the level of political groups, we are all reflecting on how to reduce the overall number of ex-ante conditionalities and simplify the mechanism of accession to the accession of the European funds. Ex-ante conditionalities, of course, have proved to be the most effective mechanism to ensure the right framework for investment, but at the same time, it is a burden for beneficiaries. And I am of the opinion that we should be careful not to overload cohesion policy with too many conditions. Anyhow, after this very fruitful debate, I have listened carefully to your intervention. I am more than ever convinced that cohesion policy cannot tackle demographic change in the EU through a one-size-fits-all approach. Some regions will face sharp population decline, while others will experience steady population growth. Demographic changes in the EU therefore call for a differentiated approach. We need to ensure policy coherence and flexibility to address this specific situation, and this can only be done through close cooperation with local and regional authorities. Thank you for your attention.
Dziękuję bardzo pani komisarz. Niech mi wolno będzie pogratulować również sprawozdawcy.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner, and congratulations to the rapporteur as well, Ms. García Pérez. Yes? Yes, point of order?
Sí, una cuestión de orden, muy brevemente.
Yes, briefly, Chairman. During the debate, somebody took the floor, somebody who raised a question which they've done several times in the past and is basically showing discrimination against women in the European Union. So I would ask the Bureau, through you, Mr. President, to look into the comments that he's made. It's not the first time, to see whether it's possible that we can levy some kind of sanction against him. Equality is a fundamental value of the European Union, and we can't allow that in this House discriminatory messages are disseminated against women. We are half the population of the EU, so I'd call upon the Bureau to look into the remarks made, Mr. President, so that we can see if any kind of penalty can be imposed. Thanks very much.
Dziękuję bardzo. Taka analiza zostanie dokonana. Zamykam debatę.
Thank you very much. Absolutely, we will look into it, but the debate is closed and the vote will be held tomorrow. We now move on to the next item on the agenda this evening, which is Olle Ludvigsson's report on an action plan on retail financial services. Mr. Ludvigsson, as rapporteur, you have 4 minutes. Go ahead.
För ordet, herr talman.
Thank you very much. The European market for retail